Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on new gen hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield, and this week we've gathered representatives from all four of IGN's gaming podcasts this week. Myself from GameScoop. From Nintendo Voice Chat, we have Kat Bailey. From Podcast Beyond, we have Max Scoville. And from Podcast Unlocked, we have Ryan McCaffrey. Greetings all.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
And this week we're going to be talking about that sneaky new Nintendo hardware, the successor to the Switch 2, Switch Pro. No one knows what it'll end up being called, but there are certainly a lot of rumors swirling about this device. We should note we're recording this episode this week on Wednesday, before the Nintendo Direct that's happening tomorrow, Thursday, but we do not expect that Direct to have any hardware news or information in there. Nintendo said they're focusing on games coming to the Nintendo Switch this winter, so we don't think we're missing anything here. But there's certainly a lot of rumors about this new hardware from Nintendo. It's apparently being shown behind closed doors. Apparently its power and graphics are going to be comparable to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I believe it's supposed to have a larger 8-inch screen this time around. So, Kat, from Nintendo Voice Chat, we have to start with you. What's your sort of take on all the recent rumors here?
First of all, I just want to say it's an honor to finally be part of the next gen. Nintendo is here at last. Wow, it feels really great. As for the Switch 2 or Switch successor or whatever it ends up being called, I think that the biggest surprise is that it might potentially be on the level of the Xbox Series X or PS5, though I would temper your expectations a little bit. And I think that maybe Xbox Series S is a closer shout. I think the key here to understanding all of this is all of the reports of DLSS 3 being a big part of what Nintendo is trying to do. There was a patent a couple years ago about Nintendo exploring AI upscaling technology with a lot of its games. But I think that it's really intriguing that the Nintendo Switch may be going in a 4K direction for its hardware, and it's certainly quite bold given that in the past 15 years, Nintendo has not really been about the technology going back to the days of the GameCube.
Yep, it's true. Can you give us a brief explainer on what DLSS is?
Yes, DLSS is technology by NVIDIA, and it uses AI to upscale the visuals and generally improves performance. It's a really nice piece of technology, and is really good. When it's implemented well, it can be a great asset to games and helps them run better on lesser hardware.
Now, apparently something that Nintendo is using to show off this new hardware is the Matrix Awakens Unreal Engine 5 tech demo, which Ryan, you and I looked at and played through and talked about on this show a year or two ago now. That's a very impressive demo. I just think this sort of tech is going to raise the price of this hardware, maybe past what Nintendo would be comfortable with. What do you think, Ryan?
I mean, that's a great point I hadn't even considered, because I'm stuck on the fact that I don't believe this. I will believe it when I see it. I would love for this to be true. I hope it is, don't get me wrong. But Nintendo has never really made any big attempt to stay neck and neck with Sony or Nintendo on the technology front. And then there's also the thing to keep in mind that I paid $650 for the top-end Steam Deck a year ago, and I just don't see Nintendo being able to manufacture a portable device that is PS5 or Series X capable. I feel like we are setting ourselves up for a little bit of disappointment on this. If Nintendo can pull it off, whether it's through some real extensive use of DLSS or whatever tricks they might have up their sleeve with NVIDIA, again, that would be phenomenal. And I'm willing to pay that price. Although, again, Damon, I think you make a phenomenal point about price, because Nintendo has traditionally tried to keep their consoles more just general consumer-friendly price rather than enthusiast price, which I think is where the PS5 and Series X are priced to this day. But yeah, I'm having a hard time with the rumor, at least in terms of the supposed power level of this thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
I just want to say that you're right, but it's also kind of a new Nintendo. The days of Iwata sadly have passed, and Nintendo, I think, has shown itself more recently to be kind of more mainstream, if you can believe it. Certainly, it's being a lot more aggressive about leveraging its well-known franchises through amusement parks and movies and things like that. And it strikes me that they might be taking a different vantage point toward their hardware as well. So I think that this is definitely worth watching in light of where Nintendo is as a company.
Max, I want to get you in here. Obviously, Sony has the PlayStation Portal coming up later this year, but it's just a handheld streaming device. It doesn't natively play any games on its own. They have to be streamed from your PS5. If Nintendo has a portable device that's comparable to PS5 and they can bring it in, I don't know, between $400 and $500, is that something that you think Sony should be worried about?
I think absolutely. I mean, I feel like in the same way that Sony rushed out the iToy to the motion controls party and completely missed the mark while Nintendo swooped in with the Wii, I feel like the Vita could have been the Switch, but it wasn't. The Switch was the Switch, and the Switch is the Switch, and it stuck the landing. I don't know. I don't. The Switch 2, the Super Switch, whatever we call it, it's obviously going to be portable again. But the fact that I think it's unlikely that it's gonna either match the price point or the power of the Steam Deck. And Nintendo just doesn't historically make systems that powerfully because they don't need to. And they also, another thing is they don't sell their hardware at a loss or at a, they make a profit on it, whereas Sony will sell, a PS5 at a loss and then presumably make it up with, software sales. That's not Nintendo's MO. And they just demonstrated that, with the Switch and, most recently with Tears of the Kingdom, a game does not need to be running at 4K, 120 frames a second to be a good game and to sell well. And I feel like that is a lesson that they're not about to fall back on that and completely throw out how they've been operating for the last however long.
Well, Ryan, setting your skepticism aside, you reviewed Mario Odyssey for IGN, gave it a 10, which it absolutely deserved. Does the idea of a Mario Odyssey 2 that looks comparable to, say, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, is that at least appealing to you?
I mean, it's like my dream come true, and I'm not even being remotely jokey about it like that. I mean, we've all seen fan tech demos and fan mods of like Zelda in Unreal Engine and those kinds of things, and it looks insane. And if Nintendo unleashed their talented artists and engineers and developers on actual hardware that's pretty comparable, that'll do 4K, that can run at 60 frames per second for something like an open world 3D Mario game, yeah, you could have a Mario movie type visual quality, not unlike what Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart does. So yeah, I mean, again, I'm totally rooting for this. I would love nothing more than to shell out top dollar for a top tier performing Nintendo Super Nintendo Switch. But until it's actually announced on a stage and demoed to me by Nintendo, I'm going to be holding onto a massive rock of salt.
Well, so the Switch is $300 and the OLED model, I believe, is $350. Kat, what do you think is sort of the upper echelon of how far Nintendo could push the price and have it still maintain a similar success level to the Nintendo Switch? Gosh,
that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Will it be LCD? Will it be OLED? And another thing to keep an eye on are how will it handle loading times? Will it have some sort of solid state drive, that kind of thing? How will it handle the cartridges? These are all things that I'm very curious about. But as for your question, $450? I'm spitballing here. Sure. I think Nintendo would love to keep it cheap because of its legacy of being very successful with inexpensive and somewhat underpowered hardware that thrives on its outstanding games and art direction. But like I said, it's a different Nintendo now.
So Max, $450 would put it right in between the disk drive and the all digital version of the PS5. Does that seem Like, can you imagine? Does it seem weird to you? Nintendo is bringing out a $450 console today or next year. I mean,
I just don't see Nintendo doing that to begin with. I think they're very shrewd about that, and they understand that at the end of the day they're a toy company. They make stuff for families, and a quick way to make a mom say no is to ask for a $450 thing for Christmas, and 400 that's a little more feasible. $399, that's doable. Yeah, I mean, the thing I always go back to, and this is, I think, take this with a grain of salt, but if you look at where the companies originated, like Sony is a consumer electronics company, Microsoft is a software company, and Nintendo has been making toys and games since the Meiji era. Like they made Hanafuda cards, and they made like the wacky, incredible clapping hand and the love tester and stuff. And like there's still a little bit of that in there. To your point, like this is this sort of post Iwata age is a little bit more mainstream. But again, like the Switch is like a little, it's a less powerful than a lot of phones these days. Like it's not a powerhouse, and you don't need to make something that costs $450 to make a successful piece of hardware when you're Nintendo.
Well, we are all eagerly awaiting official news on the successor to the Nintendo Switch. But before we bounce off this topic, Kat, what's your sort of feeling on what the release window could be at this time? The Nintendo Switch launched in March of 2017, I believe. Do you think they could pull that off from now? Because they revealed that in October of 2018 or 16, and then it launched in March 2017. So it's feasible they could do something like that again, or do you think it's more of a holiday 2024 release?
I mean, March 2024 would be quite shocking, I think. There have been a lot of rumors swirling around regarding the release dates. I believe a report on VGC pegged it more toward the holidays, which would make a lot more sense because they want to get one last good holiday period out of this year. And then you start showing it early next year, and you have a list of games that you can have from various third-party publishers to get people ready. And then you make a big push throughout 2024 to give it out in the holiday. So I think that just makes a lot of sense. If they are going to release it earlier than that, their window is narrowing for promoting technology, and video game consoles historically have not done the Apple thing of announcing the thing and then releasing it the same month.
Sure. Well, I will say, as we inch nearer and nearer to the official announcement of Nintendo's next hardware, it's nice to be able to include it on the show. Whereas for years we've spent so much time just talking about PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S for the most part. It's nice. I think going forward, we'll be talking about Nintendo more and more often right on this very show. We have the results of the poll from last episode. We were talking about Starfield and Baldur's Gate and the new sort of version of early access where people are just paying to play the game a few days early or a week early. We asked you, how do you feel about paying extra to play games early? 60% of you said, I don't like it. 60% claim you're not a fan. Only 5% of you said, take my money. 34% has said, it depends on the game. Ryan, is this surprising? Because a lot of people did pay early to play Starfield, even though 60% of our audience claims they don't like it.
Yeah, I guess I am a little surprised by those results, just because we know our audience is an audience full of enthusiasts that are probably going to be more likely than their wider friend group to pay for the early access and play it sooner. So I probably would have personally voted with that 34% block that said depends on the game, because yeah, I mean, it's for the biggest games, which is, I think for probably most people is going to be a short list every year, maybe 2 or 3 games at the most. Then yeah, you might shell out a little more, but it's not something you're going to do for every single game that you're looking forward to all year, because you just bankrupt yourself very quickly spending $80 or $100 on every game you're interested in for the year just to be able to play them a little early.
Kat, we were talking about this on the show last week. As this sort of version of early access becomes more and more common, do you foresee Nintendo doing anything like this for the next Zelda Mario game? Pre-order the collector's edition to play a week early. Is that something Nintendo would do?
Wow, what an interesting question. Yes. Maybe they will do it first with Pokemon, but
sure.
Give it 5 years, because Nintendo is almost
far
always
behind.
at least a few years behind the times in that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of whatever on that trend. I play a lot of sports games, actually, and I've been doing it for some years now, and it's actually kind of hard to keep track of all of the early access versus the worldwide release dates. And if you do the early access, then you're dealing with probably bugs, and maybe you're not getting the day one patch when it is. So I actually kind of prefer to wait.
Okay, for a poll for you to vote on for next week, we want to know, how much would you be willing to pay for a new Nintendo hardware, a successor to the Nintendo Switch with comparable graphics to PS5 and Xbox Series S? Do you need it? Do you need to keep it around the Switch OLED model 350? Would you be willing to go 400? Would you be willing to go over 400? Let us know. Make sure you vote on IGN.com the day this episode goes live, and we'll share the results with you next week. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you everyone so much for joining me today, representing all the podcasts. Kat, Ryan, Max. Thank you everyone working behind the scenes in our LA and San Francisco studios to make this all possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more next gen, new gen hardware news. We'll see you then.